So it's now Friday. So it's Friday. I hope you guys are ready for this.
A weapon.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Installation 00 and a video I am immensely proud and eager and excited to present to you. You'll have to excuse, I'll try to remove it in post, but you'll have to excuse a little bit of background noise. It's rather hot in my office at the moment, especially with all the lights on and there being something of a mini heatwave here in the UK at the moment. In either case, this is somewhat of a shortened video actually. This is a contracted video that basically just aims to showcase the helmet. Give you a little bit of background, showcase the helmet for people who just want to see the helmet. There is actually going to be an extraordinarily long form video with hours worth of time-lapse footage condensed down, showing the entire development of the helmet from start to finish, that will release either alongside this video or shortly thereafter for the people who really want to see the nitty-gritty details about everything. But in either case, this is the short form, so let's get that out of the way straight away. So, to really briefly summarise, Project Mjolnir was an exploration, a technical exploration of whether or not it's possible to create Mjolnir-powered assault armour with modern technology as close as to law accurate as is manageable within the confines and limitations of our modern technology. I had been developing ideas, concepts, designs, my work even when I was at college and university in academia sort of fed into it, my experience in industry fed into it, and for 18 years now, 15 years I think at the start when I first announced everything, for pushing 18 years now, I've been dedicated and focused on seeing if Mjolnir can be made real. And despite doubting myself at numerous points through the entire process, my final conclusion is I think it is possible. And I think there's other people out there that believe it's possible as well. And I think there's other people out there that would like to see it. So I ultimately arranged the project, got it all laid out, announced it as a GoFundMe, and with your kind donation and your support and your sharing the videos and the updates, I've managed to surge ahead and actually start rendering Mjolnir-powered assault armour into the real world, which is, first and foremost, I have to thank you from the absolute bottom of my heart, because I never dreamed, as a young guy just passionate about a quirky video game called Halo, I never dreamed that 20 odd years down the line I would be making Mjolnir-powered assault armour with your support. That's just... it's just unreal. It's truly unreal. But before I get too choked up and emotional about that, so this first endeavour, so to speak, in Project Mjolnir is part of what I'm calling Phase 1. Now, Phase 1 involves creating an environment suit to thermoregulate the body, a skin-tight undersuit layer for comfort reasons primarily, a BDU, and the helmet. The helmet by far being the most complicated of those systems. Now, to give you a really brief rundown, the environment system, the cooling and heating system, it works, it's done. I've even got some nacelles here that would go over the shoulders that are at various stages of prototype that will eventually be all fed into the environment suit as well, but it works. We established that quite a long time ago now. The comfort layer is as simple as kind of a compression layer with some biometric sensors and things like that wired into it, so that the suit can detect heart rate, blood pressure, blood oxygenation, that sort of thing. And the BDU is It's still being done. It's been an extremely uphill battle, which I'll release an entire different update video to tackle, because it needs its own dedicated video, and I don't want to get bogged down with it here. It's still coming. We'll get onto it. And the final part, the helmet, which I can now proudly say is finished. It's completed, and we finally have a fully realised prototype, fully functional prototype MJOLNIR helmet, made with as close to lore accurate materials and functionality as humanly possible. And I'm 100% certain that is a world first. I've seen other people make kind of attempts at making MJOLNIR helmet. I've seen like Hacksmith heavily adapted like a motorcycle helmet to make a MJOLNIR helmet. We've seen some rather, sort of intelligent and clever applications of some cooling systems and communication systems for even the Halo TV show helmets. Adam Savage recently did a video where he covered that, but no one has done what I've done. No one has done what myself and the team behind me developing this have done. And I can say that with 100% confidence. So, that's an overview of Project MJOLNIR and Phase 1. Over the entirety of this video, you will be seeing footage from different periods of the development process for the helmet. And to give you a really brief timescale, a timeline of development, I want to really quickly go over the effort that went into creating this helmet before I finally reveal it to you. First and foremost, in order to create the helmet, we initially set out to create the Mark IV MJOLNIR helmet, which more closely matched the ideals of the project. Obviously, the Mark IV platform didn't have energy shields, and it wasn't powered by nuclear fusion, at least some of the earlier platforms, that some of the later ones were, and was on a whole more quote-unquote technically achievable. We decided against pursuing that because obviously at the time Halo Infinite was close to release, and we decided that in order to be more relevant and more recognisable, it's not that the Mark IV helmet is unrecognisable as a Spartan helmet from Halo, but the Mark VI is the face of Halo, isn't it? It's the Master Chief's helmet. So that immediately stonewalled us into a corner, in that we had then very, very tight tolerances, design tolerances to accommodate. We had to develop a helmet that looked aesthetically on the outside almost identical to Master Chief's helmet from Halo Infinite, but on the inside have systems and technology and designs and geometry that supported its function as a real functional helmet. So we had to fit everything that we planned to put into it inside of a predetermined geometry. Now, of course, the in-game assets, none of that's fleshed out. It's just a helmet. It's a geometry of a helmet. There's nothing inside. There's no frames. There's no electronics. There's no nothing. In fact, there's not even room for a head inside of the helmet. So we had to design all of that. So we had to develop completely bespoke geometry. We knew from the get-go that we're going to need an internal frame, not just for its structural integrity, for the shell itself to kind of quote-unquote wrap around, but also for all of the electronics and all the other peripheral devices that we were intending on putting into this thing to be mounted within. So we developed a completely unique geometry, went through about a dozen different versions of this geometry in order to really nail down the design aesthetic and the functional aspect of what we were trying to achieve. On top of that, I then decided that we weren't going to be developing our own augmented reality headset. There was a time earlier on in the process, I still have it here, where I bought a laser-based Pico projector, and the intention was to project onto the inner surface of the visor with a optical for refractive coating. So the decision was made, although it's slightly more expensive, it's easier from a design standpoint, and obviously it is still within the parameters of the project. It would be easier to buy a HoloLens 2, a mixed reality headset developed by Microsoft for use on the HUD systems for this project. I liked the continuity of the fact that I'm developing MJOLNIR armor, which comes from the video game Halo, which is an Xbox exclusive title, which is owned by Microsoft, and inside there just so happens to be a HoloLens, which is owned by Microsoft. including the fact that the HoloLens was actually showcased in the Become trailer for Halo Infinite. So I liked the continuity that it was that gave us for the project. But it also meant we added another very strict design tolerance that we then had to accommodate, and that's to be able to fit the HoloLens inside of the helmet, as well as my head, and as well as the frame and all the other electronic systems that we intended to put into there. We continued to develop the helmet through at least a dozen different iterations, with different ideas on how we would display and position and move different components around within the helmet. We finally settled somewhat on the design, and we decided to start 3D printing functional components, so to speak, or rapid prototyped components to get a feel for exactly how this is going to work out. I used my Anycubic Photon Mono X resin printers. I have 2 of them, and the early shells of the helmet were 3D printed with an Anycubic Mega X filament printer in PLA. It's worth noting that down the line we will probably be releasing all of these files and something of an instruction manual on how to achieve what we've achieved, at least for cosplay purposes. Maybe not quite to the same degree of shipping this out and getting it done in metal, because I mean that's overkill if you're just looking for cosplay. This is obviously a technical explosion of real Mjolnir. So stay tuned for that. After we had 3D printed all of the components, we assembled everything, got everything working, and made physical adaptations to the frame and to the shell that needed to be done. Manual adjustments that we didn't initially have in our designs, because designs can only take you so far. You have to prototype things, and you will find that there are certain things that work and certain things that don't, and there needs to be amendments made here and there. So once we'd made all these manual adjustments and the system was actually working, the helmet was coherent and was functioning as we expected, we then updated all of the 3D models, and we sent the frame models, the interior frame models, off to Craftcloud, which is an online resource that allows you to upload your 3D models and get them printed in a wide array of different materials. We chose to get it 3D printed in aircraft grade aluminium. It was done by one of the affiliate companies of Craftcloud and then was shipped out to me. While that was happening, I went through an entire electronic suite upgrade, whereby all of the electronic suites before that were manually controlled, so they had to be controlled by buttons and things like that that are actually up inside the lip of the helmet, and it had lithium ion batteries actually inside of the helmet with you, which generated a fair amount of heat and was obviously a risk if one of those lithium batteries was to perforate or become damaged. You've got a helmet on your head with a battery within millimeters of your skull. If that thing suddenly decides to ignite and catch fire, how fast can you get the helmet off? So we decided to make some adjustments there in the electronic suite and make it so that the power pack became external, and we will eventually put it on the backpack, which is where you'd expect the power source to be for Mjolnir. After completely reworking the electronics, I also installed a Wi-Fi relay, which allows me to control all of the major components of the electronic suites within the helmet via the HoloLens. And there's also a manual override, which can be done with just physical buttons that I will be mounting on something approaching a tack pad or something similar to that you saw in Halo Reach, mainly worn by Carter. So certain things can be overridden manually, and there's also some external dials that will actually be mounted on the inside lip of the armor plating themselves, or more accurately on the exoframe, that can then manually override fan control and things like that, just in case you have a failure of both of those systems. So it's redundant systems to make sure that you can still maintain comfort within the helmet. On top of that, we also completely redesigned the way in which we were working the internal communication systems. We have a microphone mounted inside of the helmet so you can speak out loud, because otherwise if you're wearing a helmet that's sealed into an environment suit, it's a muffled voice you can't really hear very well. So we needed a way to broadcast the voice outside of the helmet. Now, an earlier prototype of the helmet involved a mouthpiece very similar to the mouthpiece from the Halo TV show. and into that we put a very small but very powerful speaker driver and allowed to talk out loud. The problem, however, is that because it's a sealed helmet and the speaker, despite being front-facing, was within the helmet with the microphone, we got instant feedback, screeching, high-pitched feedback that needed to be attenuated for. So we tried acoustic dampening, we tried magnetic shielding and isolation, and eventually we had to resort to just turning the volume so far down that it was almost there was almost no point in having the speaker inside of the helmet anyway. So we made the choice to move the speaker from inside of the helmet to outside the helmet, which meant we could revert the mouth section of the helmet back to the Mark 6 Gen 3 helmet that we're so instantly recognisable as the Master Chief's helmet. But it means that we're going to have a speaker driver again mounted roughly our clavicle here, but on the exo frame. So we made some final adjustments to the electronic suite, and then I approached a company called PCBWay. And PCBWay are another online company that majoritively do PCB printing. They can do printed circuit boards and things like that, but they also offer 3D printing services, as in models. And I presented the project to them, basically just saying, is this something that you could do? And PCBWay came back and said, yes, we can do that. And they did it free of charge. So, to give you a little bit of a background on PCBWay offer a full-feature PCB printing service that allows you to upload your custom PCBs, and they will print and send them to you for you to then fabricate your own custom circuits. They offer a PCB assembly service as well, where they will also assemble your PCB so it arrives to you in a completed state. I will be making heavy use of this in the future for Phase 2 of Mjolnir, including the version 2 helmet. The particular service that I made use of this time around was the CNC and 3D printing service. Actually, strictly speaking, the 3D printing service, which is as easy as uploading your models and awaiting the jobs to be cost estimated and quotes to be given. From there you can tailor what material and method of production you wish to utilise for your build. Their prices are competitive and their service and assistance is 5-star, and I'm not just saying that because they were kind enough to do this free of charge. They kept in touch every step of the way to ensure that I was informed of the current progress, any issues they foresaw, and when the job was done. In fact, one thing in particular that I appreciated is that they reached out to inform me that some of the detailing on the tubes on the front of the helmet, where some of the detailing was very fine, and that the detail might be lost in their particular printing process. And without me even asking, they amended the models to maintain that detail by increasing the spacing between sort of the finer details. They could have just as easily not said anything about it and then just gone ahead and printed nonetheless, and then I would have received it and the detailing wouldn't have been there. But they took the time to pause, they let me know the issue, and then amended the issue to the best of their ability. So I absolutely cannot fault them there. So the results that we got from PCBWay were the 3D printed shell of Mjolnir in metal, free of charge, which was absolutely and utterly unprecedented, and saved a huge amount of the budget, I might add, as well, which meant that we could prioritise other peripheral devices and other endeavours of the project as a whole by redirecting those funds to where they were needed. So the results were breathtaking. The quality was fantastic. The tolerances were absolutely perfect. They were the way in which the segments of the helmet had to be fitted together was so seamless, it was ridiculous. And bearing in mind that this helmet is a large form helmet, it had to be 3D printed in 4 different components. That then required that certain other provisions had to be made in order to bring these parts of the shell together. But in either case, the finished article that PCBWay gave us was absolutely phenomenal. So thank you so much to PCBWay for your assistance in getting this fantastic project realised, and the fact that you absorbed the build. Thank you so much. I can't express to you how much that helped the project and how excited I was when I opened the package. Again, my full reaction to opening that package is in the long form video that's on the way. So, onwards from that, we then realised that these 4 segments of the shell had to be welded together to make a single coherent shell. It was also around here that we made the decision to weld together the front 2 hemispheres and the back 2 hemispheres of the helmet, but not weld the front and back together. Instead, we were going to mechanically couple them together. And this decision was made because all of the technology that we put into this thing, all of the design, all of the geometry, all of the electronics, was such a monumental feat. It almost felt like a shame to seal it away inside of a shell and not really see it from other angles. Again, just being able to look inside of the helmet from the inside, where all the padding is, doesn't really show you just how monumentally complex this thing really is. So we made the decision to mechanically couple the front and back together, thereby enabling us to take the shell off and showcase everything going on inside as and when we want to. Now, yes, this isn't strictly speaking law accurate, but we already have plans in the pipework for a version 2 helmet, which takes all of the things that we've learned from doing the version 1 helmet. It improves where we made mistakes, it refines some ideas and brings in some new concepts and new ideas that I think you'll approve of, but that's, again, down the line. The version 2 helmet will come later down the line after we've finished with phase 2, which is the actual exoskeletal frame and the movement system. So once we've done that, the version 2 helmet will be announced alongside it. So the version 1 helmet needed to be welded together and then mechanically coupled front and back. This was done by a company local to me called Elite Fabrication and Welding, and I reached out to the owner of the company, Andy, who was very open and thought he could definitely do what it was that I wanted to be done. There was only a small degree of trepidation because it's a 3D printed component. He was concerned that in trying to weld it together there may be some separation of the layers while it's 3D printed. As it was, none of those problems cropped up. So I took the helmet shell over to Andy, over to Elite Fabrication and Welding, and he took me to a really great welder called Jules, who I had a conversation with in regards to he's a gamer himself. He's a bit older than I am, but he's been a gamer for most of his life, and he recognised the helmet more or less straight away, and he welded the helmet together perfectly, seamlessly. After getting that welded together, it was even being in the building, there was a guy in the unit next door to Jules that instantly recognised the helmet as a MJOLNIR helmet. When the welding was done, I took the helmet up into their office space, and a guy on the computer upstairs instantly recognised it as a Halo helmet, which drove home the reality, I think, that Halo has, at least at one point or another in its history, stretched so far through mass psychology, so to speak. It's been seen by people. I mean, we knew that when Halo 2 and Halo 3 were being released, they were like world-class events, so to speak. Everyone knew about Halo in one degree or another. There was advertisements all over the world. So even people who weren't gamers knew about Halo. And Master Chief's helmet, Master Chief's look has become so recognisable and so iconic that people who aren't gamers, people who are much older than I am, instantly recognise it as being Halo, which is phenomenal. So after having that welded together, Andy said, what's the next plans for the helmet? And I said, now it's been welded together, we're going to mechanically couple the front and back, but the next plan really is to get it coloured in some degree. So that'll be either through powder coating or anodising. At which point he stepped in and said, there's a guy next door, because we're on an industrial estate, there's a guy next door who does anodising, let's go and talk to him. So I went with Andy down to this unit next door, spoke to them, and they do they do aerospace. So the anodising they do, generally speaking, isn't quote unquote colourful. And in order to anodise the helmet, it would have needed them to buy in the specific solutions and things like that in order to anodise it to the colour that required. And indeed, if they were going to powder coat it, same thing. They need very specific dyes. And there was also a concern, again, because it's 3D printed, the process of 3D printing increases some soiling, so to speak, into the finished product due to the way in which that it's manufactured. It's not like CNC where you have a large block of titanium and you machine away all of the excess material until you're left with the shell of the helmet. It's created from a powder under an extremely high-powered laser, and that process can leave some degree of soiling. So there were concerns about anodizing, there were concerns about powder coating. In either case, Andy wasn't phased and said, okay, there's another guy just across the road, let's go and talk to him, he might better help you out. So again, I went with Andy and walked across to this other place, which was called Woodville Stretton, and a guy called Lee overlooked the helmet and came to the conclusion, yes, he can colour it, no problem whatsoever. He can mask it up, he can get some things in matte black, he can get some things in olive drab green, not an issue. So I left it in his capable hands, and for a week I was back here tweaking with the electronic systems and just waiting for the phone call. And then the phone call arrived, at which point I went down to Woodville Stretton and picked up the finally painted helmet, the coloured helmet, which was breathtaking in and of itself. So I have to stop now and just say thank you so much to Andy, Jules and Elite Fabrication of Welding for being able to weld together the helmet in the first place, but also then to Andy to going above and beyond and taking me to 2 different places locally to him in order to get it coloured, in order to continue the development of this product. And again, I have to thank Lee at Woodville Stretton so much for the paint job he did on the helmet, because it's absolutely and utterly bang on as far as the lore is concerned. It's just absolutely and utterly remarkable. So thank you to Andy, Jules and to Lee for your assistance in making this a reality. Then we had final assembly. Final assembly was bringing everything together, bringing the aluminium frame, titanium shell, the visor, and all the electronics and the HoloLens all into one single unit. I will say now that we are still waiting on the sapphire glass visor. So the visor that you'll see here is actually a placeholder visor made of 2 layers of hardened polycarbonate. But the final sapphire glass visor is in the process of being made. So there's still a few little tweaks left to be done to the version 1 helmet. But now I get to reveal to you the version 1 helmet, and I thank everyone who's been involved along the entire process so far for helping make this a reality. Here is the MJOLNIR Mark 6 Gen 3 Halo Infinite Master Chief helmet, fully realised. So this is the MJOLNIR helmet. It is heavy as hell, as it should be. It weighs £7 maximum. And if I just take you, let me just hold it up for you. I'll just take you over the helmet, so to speak. Actually, I might better put my hand up in there. There we go. Yeah. So, first things first, polycarbonate visor. It was laser cut, laser etched. Beneath that is a gold film polarizer, and on the inside of that is yet another polycarbonate visor that was laser cut and etched with the internal visor lines. The decision was, we can have visor lines on the HoloLens, but the HoloLens has a slightly narrower field of view than you'd be comfortable with wearing the helmet. And it seemed a shame, considering that the visor lines are static and don't really move in relation to you, unlike the targeting reticle and things like that, or that kind of thing should. It seemed a shame that the visor lines would be occluded by, they'd be outside of your field of view. So the decision was made to actually laser them onto the inner visor so that when you put this helmet on, it's that much more immersive. And I can assure you, it is that much more immersive. You can see we've mechanically connected the front and back here. So we've got the seam still in place, and we have these grub screws that we can undo and remove the front and back shell at a moment's notice to reveal what's going on inside. Outside, we have a vent in the brim there, which has got a dust guard over it. That allows air to be taken in and blower fans to circulate air throughout the helmet to keep you cool while you're wearing the helmet, as well as redirect some of that airflow down between the visors and the HoloLens in order to stop fogging. The small protrusion-like devices here that obviously aren't immediately part of the original MJOLNIR helmet are actually our binaural auditory systems. Those are two unidirectional microphones that are independently fed through to a audio processing unit, which allows you true binaural spatial auditory support. So when you're wearing this and you turn on the auditory support, you can hear outside of the helmet as if you weren't wearing the helmet at all, and you can localize sound. If something happens far off to your left, you can hear it far off to your left. If something happens far off to your right, you can hear it. Straight in front of you, you can hear it. Behind you, you can hear it. The position of those microphones was specifically chosen to allow the audio that was fed through them to be almost instantly recognizable by human ears. Around the back here, it is heavy. Around the back here, we've got a ribbon cable that comes out of the back of the helmet, which all of the electronics flows through, as well as the two breathing tubes that would go to the internal breathing apparatus that allow you to switch over from breathing through the vents, which are here, to being able to be given a feed through of air from tanks, basically. It's entirely padded out. I've removed the HoloLens for now, just so you can get a feel for all of the other electronics in there at the moment, and I will remove the shell now to show you what's going on inside. So this is an underside view of the helmet looking up into the visor. Again, for the purposes of showcasing what's going on inside, I've removed the HoloLens, but upon establishing power, we get blue HUD lines, and they can be quite quickly and easily switched over to the orange HUD lines. We have the torches assigned, which can turn on and off at the sides, and we also have fan control. So these two breathing fans here are now throttled up. There's two more fans up at the top here in the brim that circulate air down through this vein here, which goes between the visors and the HoloLens, which allows this to prevent fogging, as well as circulating air up and around the back of the head as well. So with the shell removed from the helmet, we can get a look at the internals of the helmet itself. So this is the aluminium frame, and into it we get a singular ribbon cable connection going in. I've already removed the breathing tubes that would be fitted within the interior of the front and rear of the shell, but I've mainly removed them just because they get in the way of being able to show everything else here. So we have a single ribbon cable that enters into the helmet. That goes to a single distribution board just here, which then spreads that connection to all the various components that it needs to throughout the helmet. We have connection attachments here for the various peripheral devices fitted into the front of the shell, including the torches, the microphone arrays, which are actually fitted within these little nacelles here, and additional connections for the HEPA Class 15 breathing units that are fitted into the front of the frame here, as front of the shell here as well. From here, if we roll the helmet forward, so we have the air cooling vanes here which redirect the airflow to in front of the visors, which would be here obviously, but also allow other air to be directed over the top of this and routed through the frame at the top of the helmet here, which also then permeates down through the padding on the interior of the helmet so that you can actually get air circulated around your head. We have the Wi-Fi relay unit just here, 2 additional connections for the blower fans that are fitted into the brim of the shell, and we have additional ports for peripheral devices should we need to attach any. We have 2 power regulators either side here that take any voltage between 6 and 45 volts coming into the helmet and drop them down to the 6 volts that everything in the helmet runs on. So, as I said earlier, in theory, the entire helmet systems, including the charging of the HoloLens, can all be done via a 9-volt battery. It won't last very long, but it can be done. And then, throughout the entirety of the top here, you can see all of the various cables routed through to different locations within the helmet for the different components. All of which fit nicely inside of the frame without intruding upon the space in which you can put your head. Again, we've got a couple of connections here for the lights that backlight the visor lines on the inside surface of the visor. We have the auditory units here, which allow the sound from outside of the helmet to be broadcast inside and give you full spatial sound. We have the connected charge port for the HoloLens to keep it continuously charged up, as it does carry its own lithium battery, although we are looking at remedying that in the version 2 and removing that entirely. And we have the main primary mounts here for the HoloLens, which fits onto these extrusions here that are mounted onto the HoloLens mounting plate via those truncated holes. So you remove this foam padding here, make sure the HoloLens is compressed down to its smallest setting, smallest fit rather, and then it just slides in here, and then over those risers, which then get tightened down on the other side with these little retainers, so they go onto the top here and get screwed down to the top. 1 and 2, and that holds everything in place, and then the padding goes back in to the back here once that's been extended back out to its full height.
So just by pushing this push to talk button, then it gives me the direct feed through to the speaker driver, and I can speak outside of the helmet. So this is actually me speaking through the speaker from inside a weapon.
And that pretty much sums up the showcase, the reveal of a real life working Mjolnir helmet. Made of metal, heads up display included inside, electronic systems, HEPA Class 15 air filtration systems. It's real, it's a thing. Which is just unreal. Like I say, that basically wraps up the helmet aspect of Phase 1. There's a couple of other bits that need to be done for the rest of Phase 1. The rest of the team are already surging ahead on Phase 2, so that just leaves me to say thank you to everyone who's donated through the GoFundMe. This is obviously it's a world first, I've checked. This is a significant breakthrough, a significant development, but we are only just beginning, and what we've got planned next I think is going to completely and utterly blow you guys away. So thank you to everyone who's donated, who continues to donate. Thank you to everyone who may donate in the future. There's links in the description for the GoFundMe and for other ways to support the project, including a Patreon. We've got a Patreon dedicated exclusively now for Project Mjolnir, where we share updates and behind the scenes stuff that we're doing, as well as holding like unique chats for people who are Patreon members for the materials group over in my Discord. And yeah, thank you to Craftcloud for 3D printing the frame. Thank you to PCBWay for 3D printing the shell. Thank you to Andy, Jules, and Elite Fabrication and Welding for welding the four shell components together. Thank you to Lee at Woodville Stretton for the fantastic paint job. I think all of us can agree that is most definitely a Mjolnir green without a shadow of a doubt. And again, thank you to all of you for watching, for liking, for subscribing, for sharing. It all helps get the project out there and let people know this is possible and we're doing it. I like to think that at least some of the people who were naysayers at the start have perhaps looked at what we've done here so far and thought to themselves, okay, maybe this has got some substance. And if not, I'm still more than willing to prove you wrong. Anyway, again, thank you everyone. There's much more to come. And yeah, take it easy everyone, and find peace in the domain. So cool. Thanks for watching. If I could respectfully ask, if you enjoyed this video, consider hitting the subscribe button and the little bell icon so you're told the second a new video hits the shelves. Hit this video with a like if you enjoyed, and if not, it's not a problem. And be sure to pop a comment below to throw me an idea on what you want to see next. Massive thanks to my awesome patrons, Spartan10148, the Metarch of my facility, Falcon, Prophet, Leon, Sophia, Mikhail, and Irrefutable, the monitors of the array, Darian, Flaming Halo, Cameron, Spartan0137, the Cave Potato, Andrew, Shia, Dakota, and Ghost, my diligent sub-monitors, my fleet of Strato Sentinels, and my loyal enforcers, and all other patrons who have supported the channel and helped keep the domain operational. Huge props and recognition to Todd Morrison, Spartan137, Wesley Stuckey, and Jacob Kemp for jumping on as Tier 0 Transcendent YouTube members. You guys are epic. Shout out to John for reasons. And if you want to help support the channel and score yourself tons of perks and merch, head over to Patreon or consider becoming a YouTube member. Links, as ever, are in the description. Much love. Take it easy everyone, and find peace in the domain.